We're paper girls, so we stick together.
Talk to us about your character in the series, and go from there.
Yeah, I got really lucky. I'm not a character in the comic, so I didn't have that burden that a lot of actors have of fans having a very specific attachment to a character. So I was able to sort of create it on my own, and I just took the words of Chris Rogers, who's sitting over there, who wrote a majority of the scripts with the writing staff. So the character's fun. This face never plays the heavy. This face is always sort of like, the awkward friend or like the frightened technician. So to play a guy who knows what he's doing and manages robots that are 60 feet tall and are helping these kids go on their journey. I'm sort of benevolent. He's a bad guy and then he's a good guy, then he's a bad guy again. So it was a bit of a mishmash, which made it really fun. Every episode is very different for this character. He leaves the girls behind, he saves the girls. So that was really fun to play on a day-to-day basis. Yeah.
Were you familiar with the graphic novel?
I was familiar with it, but I hadn't read it. My brother is a serious, hardcore comic book guy, and he's like, Paper Girls, oh my God, Brian K. Vaughan, holy crap. So I got a little nervous in the audition, because I was like, oh, this is a big deal. This is a revered comic that fans really love and adore. So I felt a little anxious, but again, playing a character that wasn't in the comic, I felt like a little less scary. But I know Brian, I know Saga, I know Why the Last Man. He's created some of these incredible stories, and I didn't realize he was so wherever he is. I didn't realize he was so young. So comic fans have another 40 years of his work to look forward to, which is so exciting. Yeah.
With all the preparation that an actor has to do to bring a character to life, and since you are playing an original character, did you have anything that you created internally to kind of inform who this character is with a backstory or anything like that?
I try not to. I try to just take the words that are on the page in front of me and sort of forget about everything else. There are a lot of actors who spend weeks preparing and knowing everything about every corner of their lives. And I tried that when I was younger. I feel like that's a younger actor's game. And it wasn't helping me. It was only making me more anxious that I wasn't remembering everything. There's so many moments where you don't need that stuff. You just have the words on the page. I came up in theater, so when you're doing plays, there is no, you're doing Shakespeare, the playwright isn't around. There's no changing it, there's no improvising, you stick to the text. The text is your map to telling this great story. So I just tried to honor Chris's words and the rest of the writing staff. And preparation was very minimal. Memorize your lines, be on time, hit your mark, and get out of there, basically. It's how I operate.
So your character's pretty erratic in the show. You have a couple loopy moments where you can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
You have a lot of lost in this.
Yeah.
I see the emotion on your face. I'm trying to think, where did this guy draw this? Because this looks real.
Well, on my first day shooting, I'll tell you one little insider piece of my first day of shooting, and most actors have to do a lot of travel. You spend a long time in hotels, as you guys are traveling everywhere to do what you do. And hotels are cool for 5-6 days, but after day 6, it starts to get real depressing, real lonely. And that was my first day of working. My first scene was sort of, I say goodbye to this, the woman that I loved. She was not caught, she was sort of forgotten in the time race, and we're no longer on the same team. And I remember sitting, my wife and I were in the middle of planning a wedding, and it was such a nightmare to do across the country, and I was in this little hotel in Chicago, and I was really wishing I was back home with my family. And so I channeled that in that moment where he sort of has this breakdown in the van and punches the steering wheel in the van. That was just me venting my frustration about being away from my poor wife while she was planning a wedding by herself, basically, is what was happening in that moment. But yeah, location work is it's strange. It's really strange to not sleep in your own bed for 3 months. It's bizarre. It's something I thought, being in the industry for a while, that I would have adjusted to by now, but it only gets harder. So I try to get jobs in Los Angeles as often as I can. Yeah.
Talk about working with the girls. I know when we work with like younger kids, we can, as adults, we get a little in our head. We've been doing this for so long, right? Did you find any inspiration or like kind of learn something?
Oh, completely. Like the passion that they were, like, you know, I've been doing it for a while. I'm 44, and so you get a little cynical. You start to see the limitations of the production before you see the things to celebrate about it. Because you've been burned, right? You've done all these jobs. You're like, oh, this is the one job. I'm gonna break through on this job, and then they don't, or the show doesn't work out in the way that you hope it to. So you kind of come in. The older I've gotten, the more that I've come in, like with my arms crossed, a little more cynical. And to see them, the 4 girls, see this for the first time, and they've all worked in different ways, but not on a series like this, with this kind of attention and muscle and money. So to see them every day be curious about things that I'm no longer curious about craft service. I'm no longer curious about transportation, and I'm no longer curious about like special effects and like, you know, the action sequences. I'm like, where do I stand? Who do I punch? I want to go home. And seeing them being curious and like learning about how this stuff gets put together, it made me sort of re-examine my cynicism as an older actor. So the girls like kind of peeled away my cynicism, and I appreciated having a different view on this job than I would have if they weren't there. Yeah.
What was the most physically demanding thing to shoot? And you can be vague if it involves spoilers.
The most physical demanding thing was just every day for me in the first half of the series, because I had to wear a fat suit. I had to wear a belly, and they didn't tell me that before I got there on the first day. And I was like, "Oh, I'm wearing this? Okay." And it was like, you know, it was July in the Midwest. It was very hot, and I just like, it was like these fake pregnant bellies. I think I had like month 5, and so it was like strapped on just disgusting, coated in sweat. It was a horrible. So like running in a fat suit. Is not my best look. I looked pretty vulnerable, like sprinting across a parking lot with a fake belly flapping everywhere.
The imagery.
Yeah, you'll see it. Now you'll see it if you go back to like, I think it's episode 5 or 6. It's like, oh yeah, there it is, flapping everywhere. We had to be stuck in some tight places. The robot, which was featured in one of the clips, they built this, stomper robot head, but fitting all of us there, and we were like packed in there for hours. So that was challenging for me, who's an agoraphobe. Like I get super claustrophobic. So that was a challenge. But physically, no. I mean, they took really good care of us. The production team and all the ADs were really mindful of like not burning anyone out. So it was pretty low maintenance.
I wasn't knocking out Ali Wong and throwing her in the trunk of your car.
So that was like day 2. I was like, hey, nice to meet you. Zap into the trunk. Are we done?
Amazing.
Okay. But she was amazing. We have a lot of stuff in common. She's a stand-up obviously, but I came up in the comedy world, and so we had some comedy friends in common. So, but Allie's the best. It's a drag that she isn't here. You guys would have loved to talk with her. She's great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.